I think that in this situation, the friend was really in like main character
Yes.
energy.
Hello, clowns.
I'm Ummi.
I'm Yu Chen, and we're the hosts of Clown Vibes Podcast.
We're two best friends who get together to laugh and discuss a variety of topics.
From all things pop culture to navigating through adulthood as Asian Americans, and more with our own clown spin, of course.
We're so glad to have you here to clown around with us, and we hope you enjoy the episode.
Before we get into the episode, I'd like to announce that we will be making a few changes to the lineup of our Throwback Book Club series. So our first episode was on Gossip Girl. If you haven't listened to it, it's episode 16. But our next book will actually be The Hunger Games, and our third book that we'll read will be The Summer I Turned Pretty, and we will release that episode closer to the launch of season 2 this summer. Happy reading!
Hello and good morning. This is I have not been awake this early in a few days, and so it was hard to wake up today.
I have been actually waking up too early these days. It's just been like progressively earlier, and I'm just unable to sleep later in the night.
Yeah, when I texted you this morning, I was shocked that you saw it and immediately replied because I went to sleep after again.
I was awake before I texted you. I've been waking up naturally at like 6 every morning, and it's scary.
I'm terrified for you. That's too early. What do you do for 3 hours before work?
I go to the gym and I eat.
Okay, fair. What do you do on the days you don't go to the gym? Just lay in bed?
Just lay in bed or do chores. I feel like there's never
Okay.
enough time in the day to do chores these days. Or I record Clown Vibes.
Okay, true. Okay, I have a great question for you. I was thinking about this before I was going to sleep yesterday, God knows why. But if you were going to be turned into a vampire, at what age would you want to be turned?
Oh my gosh. 25. Did I answer that too quickly?
Mine is 32.
32? You don't even know what life is like at 32.
Wait, what do you mean? You said 25.
Yeah. You said,
so how come at 32 you would not know what life is like?
how would you know that 32 is a good life to live if you've never lived a life as a 32-year-old?
Oh, my personal life. I think like hopefully by 32 I'm like just way more stable. Like I'm a true ass adult. I know who I am. And I don't want to be stuck in an age where you can like it's murky. Like, are you in college? Are you an entry level job? Like at 32 you could be any age.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like people, you could look a lot younger. You could be like, no, I'm actually older, but just look young.
No, I feel like we have different concepts of how vampires would age, because my understanding is once you turn into a vampire, you physically stop aging, but like you mentally, emotionally continue to develop, right?
Oh, definitely. I mean, like what the outside world thinks of you and look like based on how
Maybe
you
we
look.
have different issues, but I feel like I don't age at all. So maybe I am a vampire.
Maybe. Anyways, I could not sleep last night, and that's what I was thinking about.
I'm excited to meet you at 32. I will say, I think like I was looking at pictures of us that you sent me for our friendship episode from when we were in college, and you look really different. You don't look very different, but you have a different
I do look really different
look to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely just look like more baby.
Back then?
Yeah.
I don't think I changed at all.
What do you think?
Yeah, you look younger, but not in like a, whoa, you've aged.
Yeah, I don't think you've really changed. You do look different, but not like super different.
I think like I've filled in my face and my body a little bit more, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure.
All right, well, last night I started watching Jewish Matchmaking. Have you started watching that at all, or did you see that?
No, I haven't.
Okay, it's like the same concept of Indian matchmaking, which they just like finished the latest season. It's like season 3 now. And I will say, I think Jewish matchmaking is actually a lot better than Indian matchmaking. And
I need to watch it.
I don't know if it's like we will be harder on Indian matchmaking because they're Asian and we are just naturally like way
Yeah.
more privy to that culture. But I feel like in Jewish matchmaking, the matchmaker has like a different concept to like what makes a relationship successful. And she's not just like a matchmaker, she's a life and dating coach.
Mhm.
And she actually gives good advice. Whereas
Ooh.
I feel like Seema Auntie is just like her only advice is you'll never get 100%.
Yeah, I don't think Simanti actually has any advice. She has like that one line that she says a million times. Yeah, I don't think she's a good matchmaker or that it represents like India in a good light. I am excited to watch Jewish matchmaking then.
What did you think about this latest season of Indian matchmaking?
I'm so over this show. It's like the same. She has never created a successful relationship. I think even the people from this season have broken up. Although I haven't Googled if Priya, the one who hates ice
Oh,
cream, is still with that man bun guy. Although I hope for his sake that she's not, because what do you mean you don't eat ice cream? If someone told me they hated ice cream, I'd be like, we literally cannot be friends.
it's not that she hates ice cream, but she hates ice cream in a way that, like, I think she would get pissed off if you even say you want ice cream. Like, it visibly annoyed her that her date mentioned ice cream.
Yeah, which is like, what did ice cream do to you? I need the backstory on this.
Just comparing like the contestants on Indian matchmaking and Jewish matchmaking, I also feel like the contestants themselves on Jewish matchmaking are a little bit more experienced in dating or just like have a better understanding of what they're looking for. Whereas I feel like for Indian matchmaking, it's
Mm-hmm.
really just such a crapshoot. It's like all the contestants that they pick have like never gone on a date before or something. I mean, obviously that's like not the case, but there's like just such a stark
Yeah.
difference in the way that the contestants on Jewish matchmaking carry themselves on these dates where they're able to have like more productive
Mm-hmm.
conversations. And they're just a lot more direct with one another.
Oh, that's nice. I think indirectness is like an Indian cultural thing.
I won't get into it too much, but I'd love to do an episode on why there's so many Jewish and Asian couples. Because I had this conversation relatively recently with one
Interesting.
of my friends, and
Uh-huh.
she was like, "Oh, yeah, my mom used to date a Jewish guy before she married my dad." And then my other friend was like, "Oh my gosh, my mom, who's also Asian, also dated a Jewish
Mm-hmm.
guy. Nico's mom is dating a Jewish guy." And we were like, it's because Asian culture and Jewish culture are actually very similar in the way that they value family and education.
Interesting. Yeah, we can do an episode about it. I am gonna watch Jewish matchmaking this weekend. I'm excited now. I just haven't had time. Actually, I have had time. I'm just really into watching The Fosters right now. Anyway, should we get into it?
All right, our main topic today, it's sparked by a Bustle article that's been circulating the news site, and it's Is Therapy Speak Making Us Selfish? I mean, first impression answer to the question, is therapy speak making us selfish?
Yeah.
I agree. I 100% think therapy speak is making us selfish, but I don't know if it's we've always been selfish and we've just never felt empowered to do so. But definitely therapy speak has been quote unquote like weaponized in a way to allow us to be more selfish.
Yeah, I think it's giving people the permission
Definitely.
in a way that it hasn't been before. And now, in the name of self care and in the name of like bettering yourself, there's so much more you can get away with without thinking about the other person because you're like, well, I have to think about myself first. And that is true to some extent. But if you care about the people around you, you should also be thinking about them.
At a high level, basically, the article states that with the rise of therapy in social media, more and more people getting into therapy, the concept of like therapy talk and therapy speech has become more prevalent in our day to day lives. And what we mean by therapy speak is maybe using the term like, oh, you're being really toxic. You're not creating an environment that feels safe for us to have productive conversations. What's another example of therapy speak?
Labeling things.
Yes.
I feel like we're really in the like phase of calling people narcissists and
Yes.
like labeling and diagnosing other people when this is a very complex diagnosis. And while you could have a good understanding of like that person being whatever label you're attaching to them, but you don't necessarily like have the right or the experience to do that in a way that's productive.
One of my biggest pet peeves is when people just start throwing the word like anxious attachment or avoidant attachment in like every aspect of life. And I think like therapy
Yeah.
speak and dating TikTok have many crossovers.
Oh, for sure.
Going into the article, so in the article, the writer goes into a few couple scenarios that they've interviewed across like people our age, I think.
Hmm.
What is a story that just like stood out to you the most?
I think the starting story in the article where her friend basically sent her a quote unquote breakup friend text with no opportunity to have a discussion or to clarify, like, what does this mean? I have personally received a similar text, and it's extremely jarring to not be able to get the answers you're looking for, get the clarification you're looking for. And especially that person's text was very clinical. It was really like, I don't have the capacity. You know, it was very removed and not rooted in like empathy at all. And it was a bit triggering.
As I was reading that, I was 100% thinking back to your situation. I think the difference is that in your situation, I don't think that person used therapy speak.
No,
And
definitely didn't.
that is like kind of the fine line between therapy speak and setting boundaries. Both have like the same goal. But in my opinion, the difference between like setting boundaries using therapy speak and setting boundaries using, I don't know, colloquial language, like conversational
Yeah.
language, is I feel like in therapy speak, there's just this automatic air of, I'm right, you're wrong because I've done this like
Yeah, for
level
sure.
of work that this is definitive and doesn't leave any opportunity for discussion or the other person's opinion.
Definitely. I think it makes a huge difference. And I think the reason like my situation was able to recover was because it was not a therapy speak situation. But I think a lot of therapy speak has a tone of finality to it that is just not true and not appropriate in a lot of situations. What was the story that stood out to you?
The story that stood out to me was another friendship breakup where she basically like got invited to a party. She showed up late, and for some reason at the end of the party she said she felt unsafe and unloved by the host. And the party was like the host's birthday. That was
Yeah,
so jarring because it reminded me
Barry.
of a friend who I'm no longer friends with. Do you know who I'm talking about though?
I think so.
She never said like these exact words. She felt unsafe and unloved, but the whole like situation is just like you're invited to another person's party where you're supposed to be celebrating that person, and you are the one that like showed up
Yeah.
late, and she invited you into like an intimate setting, and you think that this is a situation where you're supposed to feel so loved and so safe. I really like can't imagine. I mean, obviously we weren't there to like experience the vibes, but definitely
Yeah.
like feeling unsafe. What does it even mean to feel unsafe in a friendship environment?
Yeah, I would assume feeling unsafe would be like if you're sharing something really like intense and the person is not being like understanding. But in that, what we were presented as like a party or like small get together situation, that's not happening. So I don't know, like in that situation, what it means to feel unsafe. And I think that in this situation, the friend was really in like main character
Yes.
energy. But this is not your party. Like, you're not the main character of this situation. And I think therapy speak and like kind of therapy in general promotes being the main character like a lot.
That's so interesting that you brought up main character energy because did you see all that drama around Alex Earl and Topher and the Tarte like influencer trip?
No, who's Topher?
I don't know who Topher is. I thought Topher was like that really redneck little kid who loves ice cream that's been circling around TikTok, where the guy's like, who do you think is
Uh-huh.
the scariest? And they're like, I think Topher is the scariest. And it's just like little kids having fun. But there's this guy who is like a big personality on the web called Topher or something, and Alex Earl brought him as a plus
Okay.
one to a Tarte trip in like this resort or something. And apparently there's like
Yeah.
shade between the two of them now. And people were saying it's because Topher has main character energy. And when you are brought in as a plus one to like a big influencer trip, like you are not the main character. And it's so funny because like
Yeah.
influencer culture and like social media culture has now brought in this like interesting dynamic where now you know not to pick someone who's always the main character to a brand trip, which is not like a scenario that we would ever be in, but
But I think it's applicable to other situations too, right? Like you don't
exactly.
want to bring like a plus one to anything that like you're going to where they're going to try to like outshine you. There's a time and place to have a main character energy, but there's also a time and place just to like chill in the back.
Exactly. And I think as like society has become more reclusive, I would claim, especially with like post-pandemic social norms and just us not being in person as often, I feel like we're really losing
Hmm.
touch with how to navigate these social dynamics of like main character energy and like when to be more outspoken and when to kind of like sit back and know your place around a group of people.
Yeah, I think because we were not going out as much, everyone thought like any opportunity out was time to shine. And that is simply not true. And it is pretty nuanced, but I don't feel like it's difficult to know.
In the article, they specifically say like therapy speak is making us selfish.
Hmm.
Have you seen like a spike in maybe your internal selfish behavior now that you've been in therapy for much longer? Or do you think that you just feel maybe more ready to set these boundaries or push back on certain requests?
I don't think I am still even at the place where I am pushing
I
back.
think you are. In work, you definitely are.
Oh, true, true. In work, I personally don't think that I'm becoming more selfish. You let me know. But I think like I am standing up for myself maybe in ways I wouldn't before. But I, in general, am very, or I like to think I'm very empathetic. So I hope I'm not.
Do you think there's a difference between being selfish and standing up for yourself? And what is that difference?
Yeah. To me, that difference is like, are you coming at it in a way where you're not thinking about other people? And I don't think like in when I'm standing up for myself, I'm thinking like, how is this going to affect them?
Yeah, I think I've seen you in situations where you've been like irked by something that someone said, and I've seen you like feel more empowered to express your feelings. But in every situation, I feel like it's very thought through. It's never like, I'm hurt and now I'm gonna cut them off. Like, you always consider like where they're coming from. And nine times out of 10, you get to this conclusion where like they're probably not set up to like really understand where your feelings are at. And just a basic communication of it in
Yeah.
a very open manner is an easy way to like resolve those conflicts.
Yeah, I'm never one to really like let people go. So I am never one to like be so abrupt of like, you did this to me, we're done. So I would like to think that I'm not becoming more
I'm
selfish.
always one to like really.
I don't think you are. I think you are, but I don't think so. Like for things that matter to you, you're not like cutting things out abruptly. All of your actions are very thought
It
through.
is. It's like a gradual build up. And I think like
Yeah.
what I could do a better job though is like continuing to set my boundary. I'm like reflecting back in certain situations, and there are always like situations where I was much younger and not further into my
Yeah.
journey into therapy. But to the other person, it may seem abrupt, right? I think like I've been in the receiving end, I've been in the giving end, but
True.
that last boundary setting communication that you're giving, it seems maybe selfish and maybe seem like out of nowhere, but I feel like for both parties it's never just completely out of the blue. Like in like situations that I'm thinking of, like
Yeah.
both parties really do like have a good grasp of where this relationship is heading.
Yeah, which I guess to me that doesn't feel selfish. It is just like life and the evolving nature of relationships.
I think one thing about like therapy speak in general is I feel like I'm just more aware of it now. I remember when I first started therapy and I
Mhm.
was like, I think my dad is a narcissist. Like, I think I said that in one of the first few sessions. And my therapist was really good about like, what does a narcissist mean? Like, she would always ask me to describe certain terms because, like,
Yeah.
when we're given these terms with such like negative connotations, I think we're just so quick to use it because we've never been exposed to it before. But like, I don't think I could really
Mhm.
describe what a narcissist was. And it's very common for, I think, someone to want to use these terms when you're first introduced to therapy talk.
Definitely.
Like I remember when I was first introduced to like attachment styles, to like the narcissist mother, the narcissist father, like bipolar disease. Like I guess bipolar isn't really like therapy talk, but it's a label that we
Yeah.
tend to give to individuals maybe too freely. And I think until someone actually does like therapy work on their end, regardless if you are like labeled that as not, like just understanding what like it takes to have like these types of interactions with these types of people, I think naturally kind of discourages you from using those kind of labels off the bat.
Yeah, agreed. And I think it's human nature to want to label things, right? It makes it more understandable. It's easier, like it gives it a framework, but these like terms are so complex and we've made them very like black or not black and white, but very we've simplified them so much that we think we can use them colloquially and we cannot or
I
should
think I
not.
asked you if you were feeling anxiously attached the other day. Do you remember that?
You did. Yeah, you did. And I was like, I don't think like I'm not attached. I think I'm just like anxious.
Yeah, I just like I kind of thought you would know where I'm getting at, but I didn't know the right term for it. And I knew it wasn't anxious attachment.
I didn't take it as like you're trying to like I knew what you were trying to ask and I think I answered like hopefully what I thought you were trying to ask. When I did see it I was like that's funny, but I don't like there's no attachment in this situation. Or very very little attachment to where it would not. That's not necessarily the right thing.
Have you been on therapy talk lately?
I see a little bit of therapy talks. Are you?
No, and I think there was a period where I was heavily into therapy talk.
Oh, me too.
And it's usually you're the most unwell,
Definitely. Oh,
right?
for sure.
It's like such a signal of when a person is unwell. A, you're getting lots of therapy or like relationship videos, and B, like social media is just deteriorating your mental health. Like these two
Yeah.
aspects are just like prime indicators that you're unwell.
Yeah. When I was on therapy talk, I would take every video and like try to apply it to my life and then try to, like make sense of my situation using their like crazy blanket statements, like extremely blanketed.
And it's all just, I feel like the way that TikTok has set up in order for creators to be successful, like obviously we know what it takes to be successful, but I mean, we're
Mhm.
researching the tactics here. And it's a lot of like targeted audience speak, like really bold statements that are supposed to be eye-catching and or not eye-catching, but like to catch your
Yeah.
attention really quickly and draw you in. And of course, like they're going to tailor it to such a blanket statement where they're trying to gather like the most audience and viewers that can relate to the statement. So no wonder we're all
Yeah.
just like, yeah, this makes sense for like 9 out of 10 videos.
Yeah. You know what it kind of reminds me of is like reading your
Oh,
horoscope, right? The
yeah.
horoscope is so broad. You can apply it to pretty much most situations. And that's like therapy talks tactic.
I think like my first exposure to therapy talk was like the narcissist parent, and they would give like
Hmm.
such common scenarios. I'm just like, looking back, we've all experienced at some point a narcissist father or mother, just based on like their very blanket statements or very blanket like approaches. Like our parents are human beings who have to be
Yeah.
selfish at certain aspects of their life. Like you can't go in your day to day and not be selfish. I think it's like choosing and the way that you're acting around others that makes you not really a narcissist, but there are it's like definitely a muscle that you flex. I don't even know if it's a muscle.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very toxic, and maybe we're on the other side because now videos about it are more about how they're toxic, at least sometimes.
Okay, but do you think like therapy talk or just like the more widespread knowledge of therapy on social media has helped you at all? Because in a way, it has for me. Despite how quote unquote toxic it may be, I do like that it's spreading awareness of certain behaviors that, like,
Yeah.
especially us as Asians, like, we don't get that kind of teaching or learning from our parents or our siblings.
Yeah.
And it's definitely not something that's taught in school. And so the only way that we're able to like
Yeah.
really learn about our behaviors is if we go to therapy and if we're on therapy
Mhm.
talk.
Yeah, I think it has because while some things are really outrageous, it still gets you thinking about it. And then, hopefully you're thinking about it more objectively and like does this actually apply to me? And there are situations that do. And it is helpful to be able to hear it, take a step back and think like, okay, do I like this or do I not? Like, what do I want to do about it?
I just have a question. Looking back at like your
Okay.
friends or maybe like situations that you've been in, have you ever had like therapy
Uh huh.
talk given to you?
I feel like no, most of my friends are not in therapy.
Okay, but that's the thing about like
Besides
therapy
you.
talk is most people are using these terms and they're not even in therapy. Like it's such like a widespread thing now.
Yeah, okay. Oh, true, true, true. I can't think of anything, so if it's happened, I've blocked it out. That's my coping mechanism is to forget, and I can't recall a situation. Has it happened to you?
I don't think directly at me. I've always experienced friendship breakups or breakups in general in the very normal manner. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I can't tell at this point. Maybe good thing.
It's a thing, yeah.
But I think just like as I was reading this article, it reminded me of this one friendship breakup that I didn't experience, but I was kind of like privy to and like a witness of. And
Mhm.
although I didn't think they used therapy talk, I think this person was in therapy, and that really influenced the way that they behaved. So they just like completely ghosted their friend. And they've been like friends for a
Mhm.
while. They've been roommates before too. So they've like spent a large chunk of their time together. And this friend just like completely ghosted
Mhm.
this other person. And as this was happening, I was just thinking, like, this is such normal behavior for that friend who just completely left and didn't give an explanation. And I
Yeah.
think there is somewhat of a correlation between going to therapy and being quote unquote more selfish. In that instance, I did think she was being selfish, but not in like a negative connotation way. Like, what is a way to describe someone as being selfish, but more of like they're prioritizing like what they need and they're not necessarily like opening the conversation for the other person. Like they've set a boundary, but maybe
Yeah.
not in a very communicative way. Is that selfish? I don't know.
It's hard because I think selfish is a negative word in general, but it doesn't need to be. Like, there needs to be a counterpart word that's like selfish, but in the positive connotation, if that
Or
makes sense.
neutral, because I don't think what she did was positive.
Yeah, or neutral. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think to each person, like the other person in the situation, I'm sure thinks she's like negatively connotation
100%. Like even
selfish,
I was just like,
right? Like, you always want answers.
oh, for sure. And like in speaking with the other person, like she had really no idea what the issue was. And I think that is like
Hmm.
the biggest issue with these like kind of boundary setting is one person is in the dark and while the other person thinks they've been crystal clear or doesn't think they need to give an explanation. And it kind of like brings me to like my final thought in this, and it's that do we as humans, social creatures, owe other humans something? Like, do we owe people things, behaviors?
Think it depends on who the other person is, right? Like, inherently, if you care about someone else, you probably feel some sense of like duty to explain. But if you've gotten to the point where, you don't really care about this person anymore, you feel like you don't have the duty. But I think anytime you had some sort of like substantial relationship, there is a duty to, explain yourself, not explain fully, but like at least give some sort of answer to the other person.
I remember when, you were in a situation like this and the other person kept on pushing back saying like they didn't have the capacity, but that's therapy talk. They didn't actually say that, right?
Yeah.
They just
Yeah, they
like
didn't actually say that.
were emotionally spent and couldn't handle it. And I think that is kind of like it's an appropriate response. It's not like both parties are closing the door in an open conversation.
Yeah.
It's finding the right time and the right amount of energy to give to a situation. I've been in situations where, it was kind of like a flat closed door, like no open communication. And that's fine because I never really wanted like a conversation, anyways. But I think like the best
Yeah.
way to handle this is if you are going to give like a ghost type of answer or like a therapy talk type of answer, always be more open to having the door open again for like a conversation whenever you're ready.
Yeah. Also, there's so much misunderstanding happening all the time. People are not communicating the same way you are. It's very easy to not fully understand what each person is saying. So I think like having just an open dialogue allows clarity in a way that is necessary sometimes.
I remember I used to tell this one friend who I'm no longer friends with, honestly, because I think she is a little bit selfish and maybe she's grown, but
Mhm.
her whole thing was like, she thought every situation was about her. And in life, it's not, and she didn't have that awareness. But what
Yeah.
like two situations that really stood out to me was one, like she wanted answers from every single guy that she was like talking to or like was dating at a point, and she wanted to send out a survey, and not as a joke, not as like a funny joke, but as a like I deserve answers, like they owe me answers type
Yeah.
of way, which is just, in my opinion, like, yes, you can ask for it, but not in such like an entitled way. Like it has to be more of a
Yeah.
natural conversation. And then B is when she, I don't know, stalked her professor because she was kind of like in love with him to the point where he reported her to like, I don't know, student legal services, or like reported her to student services. What is the like
Yeah.
the judicial or like service that's at a school? Anyways, he reported her. And she was like so mad because she was like, he owes me a recommendation letter. And I don't know, maybe I spent too much time trying to convince her. At this point, like, if someone is like so
Yeah,
convinced of
yeah.
this, like there's no reason why I should be spending so much energy. But I was just so emotionally spent trying to convince her that he doesn't owe her anything at this point, and you
Yeah.
don't even want that recommendation letter.
Yeah, I think what's different is in those situations she like didn't really have real relationships with these people. Like you would not expect your like random hinge date that you went on 3 dates with to like give you a reason.
I think it was more than that, but at the same time, like in her mind, it was less about the tenure and more just like a blanket statement that, she deserves like to know or understand. And maybe she does, but it's also
Yeah.
on your end to like kind of understand, like read the situation for yourself a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's very nuanced of like when you do deserve it or like when you do feel like you're owed it. And also that's what makes it hard, right? Like one person can think one thing and the other person thinks like no, I don't owe this and just makes it fuzzy.
Okay. I have a funny story that I actually saw on TikTok the other day. And it was when
Okay.
I was in this rabbit hole of watching toxic friendship TikTok stories. I don't know why, but maybe I just love to trigger myself. But this one girl was like best friends with this other girl. And this girl, like, recently had broken up with her boyfriend of like 3 years or something, but they were mutual friends with everyone. And her best friend had invited both individuals to her birthday party. So the girl and her ex-boyfriend, and the girl knew that her ex-boyfriend was going to be there. She's like, it's fine, we have mutual friends, da 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 da. But then when she was at the party, she was in the bathroom at one point and she hears like her best friend go, oh, so and so, to like her ex-boyfriend, we brought you a little gift. And the gift was this girl that he supposedly had a crush on at
No.
work. And this girl was like obviously devastated, right?
No.
The ex-girlfriend was devastated and she was like crying in the
Yeah.
bathroom. And the best friend the next day was like, you were so selfish at my party. Like, you ruined my party. And it's just like, you are being a bad friend
Oh my god.
if you are actually bringing a new girl to your birthday party for her ex boyfriend. Like, where does your loyalty lie?
Yeah, and yeah, where does your loyalty lie? And it's like, don't do it right in front of my face. It's about respect. It's like, okay, if you wanted to introduce him to the, or like set this up, do it away from the ex girlfriend. That's just rude.
Exactly. So I think, like, overall, I don't know if that counts as therapy talk. Probably not. But I think social media does a really good job at explaining certain situations that we don't have necessarily experience in. But on the other hand, I think it's
Yeah,
difficult for those of us who don't have that experience, who are much younger and more impressionable, to understand that, like, there are so many nuances to every situation. We should always take these blanket statements with like a grain of salt.
for sure. Thanks so much for listening. You can follow us on all social media at Clown Vibes Podcast or email us at clownvibespodcast@gmail.com.
And if you like our show and want to support us, please like, subscribe, and give us a rating and review. That's it for today. Bye,
Bye,
clowns.
clowns.